So me and this person have been having a wonderful discussion in the comment section of one of my videos, and I'd like to bring it up. And we're going to be nice to them because they are being very level-headed and we're having a good discussion, and that's what this page is about. But I find this argument is a bit of a straw man. Breeders don't argue that cages are bad if they're larger. You never hear a breeder say, oh no, you have too much space, you need to cut it back. It's a false argument. I don't care if you have a cage that is 10 foot by 10 foot, but what we're saying is it's not efficient when running a rabbitry. And let me explain. My barn is about 10 foot by 10 foot, right? If I'm going by a colony standard, that means I could probably safely have 1 buck and maybe 2 to 3 does, being 4 rabbits. Whereas the setup I have now, I can house up to 30 adult rabbits. And if I move things around, I can house more. It's also more efficient when it comes to sanitation. It's more efficient when it comes to disease spread. It's just more efficient when you are raising animals for meat. But never do I argue that, oh no, you need a smaller setup. I always argue you do what works for you. If you're in an area where tractors are available, where you can put your animals on the ground, perfect. I don't have that option because I am currently in a zone where RHVD2 is just about 20-30 miles away in Pueblo, at least in the wild population, and I'm not risking my entire line of rabbits dying from a horrible disease. And the next point I'd like to bring up is that you are hard-pressed to find a cage that is less than 4 square foot, being 24 by 24 inches. I've looked for professional cages that are smaller for my quarantine barn. On a side note, if anyone has found any, please tell me. I don't like making cages, and if I can find a good cage for my quarantine bay, I'd be very happy, thank you. Because sick animals shouldn't have the space to move around and burn extra calories, especially if they aren't keeping weight and they're very sick. The ARBA does give lead to smaller spaces, which is fine. Where argument's sake comes in is you have these people that don't have credentials arguing against people who do have the background and credentials. You're arguing against AG colleges, PhD students that are doing peer-tested reviews as well as exotic vets. You're using ethos and pathos arguments. Because at the end of the day, we want to use logic, we want to use data, we want to use good research. Arguing feelings and emotions doesn't get you anywhere because everyone feels and has different emotions of different topics. So if you're going to argue, use science. And don't use straw man arguments. We don't say big cage bad. So I'm not doing any heavy cage maintenance this week, meaning I'm not taking any of the cages out and deep cleaning them. But what I do weekly is I will go through and I will wipe down the sides, tops, and bottoms of all of the cages from any dust and grime. Because we do live in a dry climate and we do get dust on top of the cages because of that. So for my weekly cage clean, I'll take my towel and I will put it into my water solution of bleach. And this is like really like diluted down. I'm talking a cap full for 5 gallons, and that's just so I can kind of clean everything, but also not fumigate out the whole area to where I would need to remove the rabbits out of the barn and fear that they would inhale those chemicals. To be honest, it's kind of boring. I just literally go down, wet my towel, and then just wipe the dust off of any of the bars of the cages that it's on. And then if I have a hard spot that's being difficult, I can just take the towel, wrap it around my fingers, and then just get that bar individually that is being an issue. And it's the same with the top. And basically this just manages the dust in the barn and all of the gross, icky stuff that can build up in a week. Because, again, we live in a very dry climate where there is dust everywhere. Although we have been getting a good bit of rain lately, which I'm not going to complain about. But again, I'll start on one side of the barn and just work the way down. If I have a really tough spot that's not coming out, so like let's say I have stains on the wood, I'll scrub at it a bit, but sometimes there's just no helping it. But yeah, that's really all cage maintenance is. And when it comes to deep cleaning, the only difference is I'll actually take the cages out and spray them down with a stronger solution, let them sit, and then scrub them down with like a scrub brush. So there's not really much excitement here. It's just a part of raising rabbits. Over here we have Tati and her babies. They think they're going to get fed right now, and Tati just bit my finger, which was not nice of her. But there are 4 in here. We have 3 foster babies and, of course, Miss Chow Chow. These guys just turned a month old, so we checked. These are all females, and we will start evaluating to see who we want to keep. We know Chow Chow is staying for sure, but we aren't sure on these other 3. This is the doe I want to keep out of Sadie's litter. We have started weaning them, and I'm super excited to see how she fills out. Already she has better type than her mom, so she'll be replacing her mom in the months to come. I really don't want to keep any casters, but I would prefer to keep a broken caster that has correct coloration compared to her mom, who's just a bit too orange. This is Daisy and Steve. These are the 2 Vienna marked kits we'll be keeping for our Blue-Eyed White program out of Penguin and Strawberry. Gosh darn it, I mix those 2 up constantly. And this is the little doe that looks like Strawberry that we'll be keeping back from that litter as well. This right here is actually going to be Penguin's replacement. I don't know if this still counts as a baby, but this is B-Ball. She is 12 weeks old, and she is a doe we kept back for our Vienna project. And of course, we cannot forget Miss Lulu here, who, again, 12 weeks, but I still think she's a baby. And then, of course, we also have 4 moms right now that have nesting boxes, but out of those 4, I think 2 might have kits. My bets are on 2 and Solstice, but we'll definitely see. They're due today, so we could have babies up from tonight all the way through to next week, so we'll definitely be keeping you updated on that. So in the summer, between adults and grow-outs, I can easily house 100 rabbits. But I always joke around with my husband and say that grow-outs don't count because they're eventually going to end up in the freezer. So I personally am okay with about 20 rabbits. And how that breaks down is I normally have about 3 permanent does per breed I have, and then 1 buck per breed. And then sometimes I'll rotate out some junior bucks to work on line breeding and bloodlines. So I think 20 rabbits is about reasonable for me and what I want, and that also allows me to work on my lines. So again, kits don't really count either. So if I want to keep a potential grow out to replace the mom, what I'll do at that time is I will grow the animal out to their appropriate breeding age and breed them once. If I like what that animal produces, I will then replace the mother. And the mother will either be a soft cull in the form of selling her as a proven animal, or a hard cull in the form of putting her on the dinner table. And again, these numbers are kind of flexible, but 20 adult rabbits is what I prefer. Hey y'all, I figured this morning we can talk about why you need to be more careful about your sources and your care when it comes to not just your rabbits, but any animal. And y'all know how much I dislike HRS, so let's start there. So when it comes to any source, be it research or a paper, the first thing you should look for is an author and a year. So if we go into House Rabbit Society, page 1 for Basic House Rabbit Care 101, this is what we are looking at. And in any source, what we want to look for is an author and a date on the first page. And as you can see, there is none. Anyone could have written this. Now, as somebody who in the white collar field was a social media manager on top of being a human resources manager, I can tell you right now, if you had a password and access to a social site such as this, as a social media person, you could change anything you wanted and say anything you wanted. And most of the time you want to get caught for a while. So what I'm saying here is anyone could have written this, which does not bode well for information. So moving on further down the line, we have blanket statements without any kind of sources at the end, meaning we cannot fact check back to a study or a more reputable source. But at the very, very bottom of the page, we have this, and it's basically a blanket statement saying that all of this information comes from this book, written by the founder of the House Rabbit Society. And you know what you can do at the very bottom? You can buy it. And you know, that's kind of a bit of a red flag. When somebody sources themselves and they're like, I had a college professor that was a PhD and the entire class was on his written material, therefore no matter what, he was always right. But I felt okay with it in some ways because he was a PhD professor in his specialized field. It was still kind of skeevy because he made profit off the class, but I digress. So if this person is a specialized PhD in their field, this shouldn't be much of a problem. At the same time, the profit part is a little sketch when you are just referencing your own source. So I did what any human resources manager would do, and I looked them up on socials. Here is this woman's LinkedIn. She is the chair and national board member at the House Rabbit Society. She went to an art institution and she has 72 connections. So we scroll down to her experience, and if we look at her experience, she's an editor, she's a part of the House Rabbit Society for 37 years, founder, yada yada yada. Okay, that's all fine and dandy, but where does her education? So it is weaning day for Penguin and Sadie's litter. They are officially 8 weeks old. And when it comes to weaning, I really like when the litters are about even for male to female. And that is because I can start taking the kits away slowly. So today I took away all of the boys from Penguin's litter and put them in their own pen, and I left the females with her. I'll let these females stay with mama for the next 3 to 4 days, and then I will slowly start taking them off in groups. So first I'll take off 2 of the babies, and then I'll leave her with 1 baby, and then after another 3 to 4 days, I'll remove them as well. I find doing a staggered wean like this is less detrimental to mom's health and means less chance of mastitis. We are on day 4 of Baby Bunny Watch, and that looks like a pregnant belly to me, but we are still waiting. I would love to have more Callie babies, but I doubt she's pregnant. It's Belle. Need I say more about whether or not Belle is pregnant? Everyone can say no at the exact same time now. And 2 is always a wild card. This is her 3rd strike if anything does happen with this litter. She has been quite the naughty one when it comes to being a mother the past 2 times. So I'm seeing if she did catch and seeing what happens with that litter if she did. But she definitely likes waiting till last minute. But here's to hoping we have new babies tonight. So this comment is in reference to my 3-strike rule. And my 3-strike rule is just basically my animals have 3 times to prove themselves, or I remove them from my breeding program. And it's not necessarily them not having babies, because sometimes I realize that things don't work out for them to not have babies. The only time it bothers me is when we have a doe like Belle. I hate that doe. I can't cull her until September. And that's because she is my only doe that's a Champagne Day Argent, otherwise I would have eaten her already. So if a doe doesn't catch, it's not a big deal most of the time. Bigger problems I see as strikes are if the doe has problems with delivering the kits, in the case of Stormy, if the doe cannibalizes her kits, which is not fun, or if a doe has a lot of failure to thrives or isn't producing enough milk. Or in the case of 2, where she does produce a very large litter, but her kits just don't gain the weight they should be, and they are a 3rd the size of what Rex babies should be. I'm trying her out with a different buck this time, just to see if maybe that was the problem, that the genes didn't work between Alpha and her. Now, when it comes to the sequence of strikes, it just depends. If I have a doe that had 3 pregnancies in a row that were all horrible, was a horrible mom, then it's just going to be an automatic cull. But if I have a doe where her first pregnancy and birth was not all that great, but she does well for a few others, and then she has another bad one, but then she has quite a few more good ones and then another bad one, I probably won't cull. Because things happen sometimes. But what it really just depends on is how bad the atrocities that animal had against its litter, and how much I like that animal. So for instance, If Lulu were to mess up a couple of times when it came to her future litters, I'd be more lenient than Beelzebub. Because Lulu has amazing type and Beelzebub is just a run-of-the-mill Vienna carrier. But you're going to need to figure out what's going to work for your program and how strict you want to be. If you have more cage space, you're going to be able to be more lenient. But if you have less cage space, you're going to have to be more strict. Y'all, I'm out in the barn. It looks like Solstice is giving birth. She has built a hay nest and she is preoccupied, so I think we were right about her being pregnant. Everybody else, not so much. They're still waiting. But what could cause a mom to eat her kids? There are a few school of thoughts on this. One is that there's something wrong with the kit already and it wouldn't survive. And in order to protect the rest of the nest and herself, the mom will dispose of that kit to make it to where predators can't find them. Another is that the kit had already passed away, and again, she's hiding the evidence of it. Another school of thought is that she gets scared by something, such as a barking dog or a cat in the barn, and she's trying to protect herself. So the idea is she's eating those kits to get away so that she can have more kits later someday. Another school of thought is that there is some kind of deficiency in the dough, meaning she doesn't have the right amount of vitamins or salts or calcium. And if that's the case, you can try putting a little bit of cooked bacon in with the dough right before she gives birth. We also give black oil sunflower seeds and oats, and that seems to help out a lot as well. Or they could just be really bad mothers. So I've given Solstice about an hour to have her kits. I got my handful of rolled oats. Time to see what she had. Hi, mamas. There's your treat, baby. You did so good, mamas. Here's Solstice's fur nest, and as you can see, we have some wiggly babies in the back. A lot of wiggly babies. Look at all the wigglies. So Solstice had 9 babies. It doesn't look like we have any peanuts in here, thankfully. And everyone is looking about the same size and is looking great. She had 4 solids and 5 brokens. And then also all of the brokens look like they have butterflies or nose markings, and none of them are booted or Charlies. So far this is an extremely successful litter, and I am really pleased with Solstice and how she did this time. But yeah, this is Solstice's second litter. Last time she lost 1 kit around 3 weeks, so I know she does really well when it comes to producing milk and taking care of her babies. So I'm really excited to see how she does with a litter this size, because last time she only had 6. So, good job, Mama. So a peanut is a double dwarf gene. So basically what you'll have is you'll have a dwarf gene and you'll breed 2 rabbits together, and with both of them carrying a dwarf gene, they could have a double dwarf. And no matter what you do, if you have said peanut with this gene, it's not going to make it. Normally they pass away within the first couple of days, and some might even make it to grow fur, but it's very rare. But they're not going to make it. A lot of times what you'll see is the organs aren't formed properly, or they don't have something specific like a liver or a lung or something, and it's just a bad set of genes. The problem is when you're working with dwarf genes, a lot of times you don't know whether or not something has a dwarf gene or if it has a false dwarf gene. Meaning until you do a test breeding, you won't be able to see if that breeding will produce peanuts. I'm very careful with that gene, and if I find that a pairing does have a double dwarf or a peanut, I won't breed that pairing again. With that being said, if y'all seen Strawberry, he's a false dwarf. I'm almost 100% sure of it. And in breeding him, we have never produced a peanut. Now, I have produced a peanut before with Coco, but he's no longer in the barn anymore. When we do get peanuts in a litter, I will automatically hard cull them, because it's more humane to cull out a peanut than it is to let it live and die. But yeah, a peanut is a double dwarf gene, and they'll have these odd-shaped heads, tiny ears, and bulbous eyes. It's pretty easy to tell the difference between them and a regular kit, and if I ever do get a peanut, I will definitely show you all the difference. So I don't know if you mean this from like a keeping everything straight standpoint, for like chores, but I'm very schedule focused, so I like to get things done every day at a certain time each day, and I'm very specific on my scheduling. Now, if you're talking about keeping straight, as in which animal is which, how they should be fed, and their background, it's just a lot of record keeping. So like I have this app called Everbreed that has all of my pedigrees and backgrounds and all that in for each of the rabbits that I can always refer to if I have questions. And then each and every rabbit has an ear tattoo that differentiates them from one another. So what I'll do is if I have a rabbit that doesn't know how to drink out of a water bottle, I'll take it, and as it's in the cage, I'll give it a little squeeze so that some water runs out. And a lot of times the rabbit will get the idea and they'll come up to it. Or what I'll do is I'll fill it with water and I'll hit the little ball so that it has water that drips down to it, and then the rabbit will take to it. What I'll also do is I'll take a black marker and I'll mark where the water level is to make sure that they are drinking an adequate amount of water through the day if they are new to using water bottles. And that's just to ensure that they are hydrated and that they are actually drinking. I would not use that method if your water bottle leaks, and I would just continually fill it and keep an eye on them. So I hope that helps.